is here because I was hoping there would be at least 3 people in the room. I am competing with Docker, and I'm competing with Erlang, which is amazingly, awesome. So you should go to that one instead of this one. But we'll see how it goes. So this is really just a discussion about some things I've been thinking about. Specifically, the concept, a lot of what's going on right now are things like the Docker thing, for instance. How we actually get our data out to our users, right? And one of the things that Python does really, really well, in my opinion, is packaging. But there are definitely people out there that don't know how to do it. So I'm going to introduce you guys how to do packaging with Python, show you simple stuff. But most of this is actually a conversation, and we're going to look up lots of resources, and we're going to show you guys things that get you started. And hopefully it will help you guys distribute your packages as you get developing them, whatever those might be. So before we get going in that, I want to introduce a product that I was introduced to by a company down in Lehigh called @Task. And they use this little thing called denote. Denote is this really cool password sharing tool. So I can go in here and I can say, hey, I want to type in something. Ooh, let's spell it wrong on purpose. Why not, right? And then down here I can choose a passphrase if I want, or I can generate a random one. Okay? And this password will then be encrypted. And the documentation on Aaron Taponce's website, he's the one that wrote this. He works at Xmission, and he wrote this software. Basically, the idea is it completely encrypts it two-way and ensures that it's only in one place. And when you collect the password, it is erased from the database immediately. So there's no real risk of being anywhere but what you've been given. And there's some actually cool features to it. So for instance, I'm going to go ahead and submit this. And hopefully it goes out to Xmission, because I did do this earlier, and maybe it's not going to work. Oh, there it goes. Oh, look. It might be that, let's see. No, it works there. So why was the connection interrupted? Let's try it again. It might be that I actually, yeah, that's weird. Okay, well, let's try running it locally, I guess, because that's not working. But the idea is that it's supposed to provide a password. So let me run this in IPython for a second. Because, well, and I don't even have it straight. Like, that sucks. I don't know why it wasn't working. It was working a minute ago when I was over there. So I apologize. Yeah, apparently it's down. So Xmission has this. Does you guys have it at endpoint? Can we use that one? So Spencer also works on this project. So here's it's the same exact application. Let's type in it again. Right, and I generate my passphrase and I hit submit. And the value of this is that now I have some information. For instance, I have a URL I can provide to someone, a single URL, and as soon as they put in that password right here, your passphrase, then it will be unlocked, removed from the database atomically, and provided to whoever had that access to that web page. Okay? So how many of you guys have used like a password safe? It's like LastPass or KeePass or any of those, right? This is similar to that, but it's a one-time thing, which he's working on some other features like multiple passwords and other cool stuff that's coming down the road. But what about this one? Anybody know what a duress key is? What's a duress key?
So he's trying to force the password out of you and give it
Yeah. So what does yours do?
and it'll come up with
Some random junk, right?
something else,
Yeah.
not what you want.
Right. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and just enter the duress key. So we know what we typed, right? And if we go, you can also destroy it. That's another thing you can do. Let's go to this here. We'll open that up in a new window. And it just says, hey, enter your passphrase. And I can go down here and I can enter my passphrase, or I can enter my duress key. And it actually has little question marks and explains it. Luckily, endpoints works. And is that what I wrote? Is it from the XenoPython also? Okay. So this is just a phrase from the XenoPython, random text from somewhere that they grabbed off of there. So it also just deleted it from the database. So I can't go back and put in that passphrase and get it. So this is a really cool feature. Hey, good morning or afternoon, whatever it is. So this is pretty cool tool, right? Except there's a couple things that Aaron did that I helped him with and that I want to kind of talk about specifically regarding packaging. So this is the package. It's at /denote on GitHub, just like that. Okay, and we're going to read the instructions. We're going to follow his instructions and try to figure out how to install this. So it says, of course, clone it. Then install these packages. If you're a Ubuntu user, this is what you do. If you're not, you might have to figure it out because he hasn't documented anybody else. But they're not that hard. I did it on Fedora. It will probably work on a Mac if you're a Mac person, so you can tinker with this. So then he says, hey, look, make a directory called var /dub/dub/dub. Okay. So I'm going to go over there and do that. And of course, he wanted me to be root, so we'll do that. And then he wants me to make a directory called denote by cloning that in, which I've already done for everybody because I wanted to make sure it worked. Okay. So I cloned this in to here. And I've got a bunch of configurations that I've already pre-set up. He walks you through all the steps and sets it up. When you run a setup.py, after you've done all this choning, you run Python setup.py. Now, I'm really interested in this because I want to share, who knows what setup.py is supposed to do in Python? Anybody? Nobody knows what Python. Okay, so this is going to be like a really good tutorial class. I'm sure you know. You've got to know. What is setup.py supposed to do? It's our installer, right? Essentially, it's an installer or build tool. It makes sure that the tests run, all these sorts of things, right? So when he runs it, it doesn't kind of look right. Yeah, it's like make, kind of. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's kind of usually gives output. I know this for sure. So this one didn't. So let's have a look at it, because kind of, let me make it a little bit smaller and do it again, just so you guys can see a better copy of it. Does this, anybody who writes packages before ever seen something that looks like this? This just looks like Python, right? It's just a script that he wrote. And I started mocking him, properly, because he's my friend and I have to tease him. But he actually has some really good stuff in here. He actually has the functionality to get the website started, and this is the main thing I was going to focus on. Is the problem he has here is that we want to be able to distribute this for a bunch of people. And if you run this one time and package it up, you have just created some problems for yourself. We're gonna explore those. That kind of sound cool? Fun? Okay, good, because it was fun last time I did it. And the time when I did my presentation at Utah Python on it too. So he's got some configurations that he wants to create. He's got some salts that he creates, and this is really, really important. When you create the salts in his thing, this is actually how it becomes unique. So each site should be unique, right? So we have some problems that we have to address. And then he makes a data directory so that he can store his database and do other things for you. Everybody okay with all of this? Okay. But this is a problem, because what is a setup.py supposed to look like? Anybody know? Let's have a look. So that brings another question. There's a bunch of different types of setup.pys. There's one called distutils. There's one called distribute, which is now part of setuptools. And there's more coming down the pipe all the time, and people are doing things. When we did this conversation the first time, we basically conversed about what options there were. So I want everybody, if they have not a website, but a page to go down to this third link where it says writing the setup Python. It's just docs.python.org. And then slash, this is distutils. I have to go to setuptools. I'll go find it because I grabbed the wrong one. If you just Google setuptools, it also shows up. We'll go back to that in a minute. Right there. So pythonhosted.org/setuptools will take you there. And this is the documentation we're just going to go through, because it's pretty much what we need to do. Now, I've got a finalized product, and I'll show you guys at the end when we get there. But what I need from you is actually help to figure this out. So we want to be able to do a few things with denote and make it run. Right now, we're just setting it up on a website. Well, I don't really want to do that. Maybe I want to run it on the Python command line and test it to make sure it works. Maybe I want to distribute it to all my friends and make it so that it can be testable, have some testing suites in there and things like that. We're not going to do all of that. We're going to explore kind of how to do a package. So let's go down here a bit.
The code is still going to be readable, or are you hiding the code?
I'm hiding it for a moment, but I do have the code available already on the site.
No, I meant when you distribute the package.
Yeah.
Is it
It does not become binary. You can make it so that it's compilable if you want. Like it's by PYC, it'll be compiled in bytecode for you, but in general, it doesn't do that. This isn't really helpful. All right, so find I just look at the example. Oh, hey, that's even better. Okay, so this is probably more what it should look like down here. Now, if we took that and compared it to what we just saw, does it look even close? Yeah, they're both Python. Okay, so they're both Python, right? That's pretty good. So, but how do we transform to this? Because the whole thing is like I've got a setup function, and inside of setup function, I've got a name, a version, an author email, description, a whole bunch of things that I need to make work. So we're going to take this file, hopefully, with your help, and convert it to that. Now, we've got some things to consider. Like I mentioned, we have up here, we have our configurations that we have to worry about, and we have to create some salts. As I was talking with the guys last time doing this, it was kind of tricky because a lot of them were Python experts, and I only see like a few of them in here, and I don't know of most of you, so hopefully you guys are better at this than me. What would I do with this salt section? I mean, if I ran a setup.py normally, what does it do? Should we try it? If we just copy and paste and see what happens? Okay. So I'm going to grab this right here, just this part, and stick it in setup.py. Because my editor of choice is the best editor there is. If you debate that, you can leave now. Just kidding. All right, so let's go ahead and fix it up just a little bit. I'm going to pretend that I know formatting, but I really don't. So what's the name of my project? Denote. What version is it? Here, let's just do 0.1. Aaron doesn't like that. He wanted it to be 1.0 because he doesn't like semver. So for those of you who don't know what semver is, it's semantic versioning. You can look up semver.org, semver.org. So it was Aaron to Ponce. So why am I doing all of this? What's useful of this? Or why is this useful, excuse me?
Well, for install tools, give you information like that.
Right. Dependencies, that's a good one. I like that one. So we've got why is, so we can get information from it. We have dependency structures we can build into it. We also have descriptions, and there's some important pieces that go with how you distribute it.
It'll also be more searchable if it goes up to the
Yeah, so PiPI or the cheese shop, which it actually says right here, a demonstration of how to create, document, and publish to the cheese shop at PiPI.org, or PiPI. PiPI and PiPI is like this, people get grumpy about it because PY is something completely different than PYPI. So just so you're aware. Not arguing that. All right, so what does it do? Let's do the description then. Anybody want to give me, I didn't mean to do that, change to that. Anybody want to give me just a basic description of what it does?
Host single use, deductible.
Okay, I'll just write what I want then, because... All right, and then do we know a license? I think it was MIT. But if I don't, I can find out. He told me what it was, but I forget. It might have been the Apache license, it might have been the MIT license. But you can put your license in here. Other keywords we can also put in here. This is really useful for when we distribute it, right? Now, the whole point of all this is we're doing all this work, right? And I could add a bunch more stuff, but not all this is required. So let's figure out what else is required here. So, he did 1.01, that's what it was. I have a cheat sheet right next to me. Why did I name it denote without the dash in it? Anybody know why? Yeah, Python hates dashes, actually. Underscores are better. So I got after him for that, too. So yeah, you run into problems with the dashes, so he actually let me shorten it to denote. That'll actually be the name of the package when it goes into the library, like where it actually fits in your path, in your library path. So it'll be in /dnote instead of d-note. What else is there? Oh, let's see. So there's this one. Anybody know what that's for? Good, me neither. The zipped safe thing? I moved down after you looked, probably. Or you looked after I moved down, sorry. What about this one? Did anybody know this one? So maybe we should start looking at the package itself. Maybe look at the binaries inside and see what's laid out. Because we need to include some package data. So let's save this for a second and go start looking around inside there. So I've got a bunch of stuff in here, but I specifically have a documentation directory and a notepy, the installer, the notepy, a readme, a setup, a static, a templates, and a utils directory. And I need to do something with this information. Some of them are Python scripts, right? Like utils.py. What do these have in them? Anybody know? Anybody downloaded it yet and started looking? People should be get cloning this and follow the instructions because it's funner that way. So let's have a look at note.py. Actually, let's do a less. So this is actually the application itself. So it's doing this thing called import deconfig. Deconfig.py is actually where he writes those salts that we talked about a minute ago. And then down here, he has this nice little node object. He writes a whole bunch of other things, creates a URL, and there's the keys for it, and a whole bunch of other things that he's doing. It's just amazing, and I don't even know how it all works because he's like an amazing cryptologist, and I'm just like a kind of a dumb Python guy. So here's the encrypt function. It just basically goes through and encrypts it in a certain format for you, decrypt, and pulls it out of the database. And that's it, right? So that's one Python file. We should look at this one, because this is our package file, right? Everybody should be aware of how underscore init works, or dunder init. So it's a Flask app. Anybody worked with Flask before? Okay, good. So now you all kind of, like, as soon as you relate that might be easier to see. So Flask basically says, hey, look, I've got a bunch of these little routes. So when you go to /, run this. When you go to FAQ, run this. When you go to security, run this. And when we first import, we import Flask and do a bunch of other things, and we set up our denote, which he uses all caps. I guess that's kind of a standard. I don't really know because I didn't look at that specifically. But he's got a bunch of ways to look at things. So for instance, when we do a post, it shows all that data we saw earlier when we did the commit and pulled down the information, and then encrypts it there, and a bunch of other things like that. Okay. So down here, we can also turn on debug, and he does that sort of thing. So that's the application itself. And denote.py. Oh, that's actually denote.py is actually a symlink because I was having problems with how it was working, and I was tinkering, and I could never get this to work, just to be blunt. So it was failing miserably for me. But I could do something like this. And I can import it, and I can run it right on my machine. So it just works right here. If I just do localhost, is it 5,000? There it is. So we know it works, right? Because we've done the setup, it created all the things. But we want to be able to package that. So that's basically our goal. So now I can do, you guys want to see it with a real password now? See if that really works. I bet it will. Oh, it's because I put a space at the beginning. Because the way that the highlighter works. So it says a password and it did decrypt it. And that database is all generated and all that sort of stuff. So we can see that we have all the data we need. We just need to be able to package it up. So going back to where we were, oh, there's all the Flask stuff. Okay, so let's go back into our packaging. So what is include package data? Just all that stuff I just showed you, right? So the static stuff, the CSS, the JavaScript if there is any, and any Python data. And we'll actually have like a little thing that shows all the data of where that goes. So we also need some information like install requires. And you can specify, this is where somebody mentioned dependencies earlier. So what does this require? Flask, very good. Somebody was paying attention today. Wasn't me. Oh, it's GPL v3, he says. So I'm going to fix that. right now. I think he said 2 or later, but I put 3. All right, and then you also can do things like this. Because I'm building a package, I'm actually going to be the maintainer down the road, maybe. So I can put my name in there. And we'll get rid of keywords for now. We'll get rid of our URL is going to be this. Are we making sense of all of this so far? Pretty straightforward. Okay, and then long description. Something that they actually did with long description that was kind of cool, you can also have long description. There's a short description and a long description. We could, instead of doing typing out text here, we could actually just have it read. Oops. Yeah, that's right. I'm doing these wrong probably, but ignore the syntax part. Because, well, why not, if I change that readme now, it'll just pull that data in. So that's a really nice feature. All right. So this is pretty close. Let me get rid of a few other things that we don't need. Classifiers. If you want to do classifiers, they're useful, especially on PiPI. There's a whole thing about how to do it. For the time being, I'm just going to delete them and add one other thing. So earlier we talked about specifically, which one was it? Setup.py. Oops, wrong thing. You don't want to look at that one yet. There. We looked at this and we said, hey, we've got this. So if we put this into setup.py and we run the installer, it's going to generate one hash for our entire package. And everyone's going to get the same exact hash. What's wrong with this? There's something wrong? What's wrong? You're laughing, but I can't figure out what is it.
It just means that it will be trivial for anybody who has this package installed to attack.
So attack vectors is what we're talking about here. If everyone has the same salts, when I go to your site and you deploy this, and I go to your site and you deploy this, and you go to your site and you deploy this, that's problematic, isn't it? Because now everyone has the same salt. Guess what I can do? I can guess it. And I can know what your passphrases are going to be. And I can get your passwords. And if I'm a good, person who knows security, they probably could hack into that, fix it up real quick, and steal all your passphrases. So this is kind of a concerning thing. So if we're writing a setup.py that doesn't install and deploys to everyone in the world, we don't want this here. So we want to take that out. But it presents a problem because we need a way for people to actually go through and generate that after the fact. So you can tell setuptools that you have a separate script that you want to create. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this file and we're going to put it. We're going to take this part out, that part of the file out, and maybe that'll work. I don't know. And create a file called generate denote hashes or something, whatever you want to call it. And in here, you're going to put this stuff and put a nice little Python header. Whoops. Don't put the E in user. Doesn't work. And then now you have one that generates the salts in a separate location. So now we have this file. We can then take that file and include it in our setup.py. Oh, because it's over here. It's open. So let's go ahead and add that in our setup.py right here. Just a moment. As I'm cheating. So scripts equals, and in there. So this will now allow us to, when we do the install, run this after the fact. Okay, make sense, everybody? So we're basically building a package and making it easy to do, and then now we can start doing some testing. So I've shown you all the interesting, fun stuff with this. Let's delete the thing we talked about up here, because I didn't do it. And what I'd like to do now is, we're about 25 minutes in, is show you what I actually did, because while that was useful and all, this is way better. So he still has this nice little read here, but then we've got this nice setup, and it actually has everything in it we just talked about. Should we try this one instead and see if it works? See what it does? Okay, so let's run Python setup.py now in this directory and see what happens. So we did that earlier. Doesn't work. How come? We have to specify install. Okay, well, that's one option. Or build. Or dist. Or sdist. Or any of these other lovely options here. And all the configurations that we just did, you can actually do on the command line too. So if you want to be lazy and you want to just make one big long script line, I wouldn't do this way, but you could. Okay, so install, right? In the last class, people were talking about virtualenv. How many of you guys use virtualenv? Okay, I don't. Instead, I use this switch called user for a lot of local stuff. It'll put it actually in your .local directory if you're using a Linux system. If you're using a Mac, I think it puts it in your your application directory where it's in your home directory. So it'll be in your Python path. So if I run this, it actually solves a whole bunch of stuff for me. So let's go back to the top of what it did. So it runs install, runs bdist egg, so it creates an egg info file, it creates this denote egg info file, and it creates a whole bunch of other things. This will become very important in a few minutes, this package info file. That's all generated for you, though. Isn't this nice? All of a sudden, we can just have a package now. And it's writing all of these things out to different locations and generating everything we need it to generate. Now, I've taken some liberties with it, like the static stuff. You'll have to figure out where that goes. But it's all generated for you. And if you look at this configuration, it's all written up. And it documents how to do it. And then we've got our build directory. Right here, it's got build, and it's doing all the bdist stuff. So now we have a binary distribution, which has got the PiC files in it, and our egg info, and then we move down further on. And now you can see right here, this is where I did the -- user. It puts it in my local lib python 2 site packages denote egg directory. So everything's now actually packaged in a proper location. You could actually do it without the -- user, and it'll put it in your system path. If you prefer virtualenv, it'll put it in the virtualenv path properly. It follows the environment properly for you. Setup.py with setuptools works. Notice also down here, it resolved dependencies for us. So it found Flask and installed it in my user local lib. It found it's dangerous because that's a requirement of Flask, and also Jinja 2 is also a requirement, so it found that probably somewhere down here, and workzug and markup safe and a bunch of others. Make sense? So all the dependencies are now resolved, and it should just work. Right? It should just work. So what I had before was a directory here where I was using localhost to do it right here, but I don't have that in this directory, right? So if I run ipython again, and I run this command, it shouldn't find it anywhere except in my path. So before we do that, let's look at the path. Oops, it's just without that. So, you see it? It put it there for me. It built that. That's what Python does. It actually, the setup.py with setuptools builds the path for you. So it makes it easy to just deploy things. So now we should be able to do import denote, and I had to do that wrong, and then application run, and we're actually running this from the system on my local directory now, as opposed to from the current directory we were running before, where it wasn't packaged. What am I doing? Well, I probably did this part already, but what did I not do that I needed to do? It's not running that one that was over there. It's running the new one in the system. But I didn't generate hashes. I probably already pre-did it, so it's working. But if I hadn't generated the hashes, it would error out right here. In fact, we can delete it and show you that. So if I look at scripts, there's this generate denote hashes, which has a little bit more work in it than it looked like when I showed you initially. But essentially, it's just looking at a configuration file that I created, pulling that information in, and generating where the denote ini goes and that sort of thing. Now, if we read the instructions beyond where we were earlier, he runs that. He does this Apache setup, which I could never get to work with this. But with the newer way, I can get it to work really easily. But there is actually a better way, which is the Nginx setup. So when you get to this is part you'll have to do separately anyway. This isn't part of packaging. The newer one, which isn't my fork, covers how to do the install, run the generate denote hashes, and actually is updated with all the stuff we just talked about. Everybody feeling comfortable with packaging so far that isn't like bored with my talking? I'm sorry.
The generate denote hashes run by setup.py?
It was. So if it's not already running, it actually doesn't. It didn't work when I did it originally, so I think I documented it in here just in case you needed it. But it wasn't working originally, but I think it worked this time, like this last time we just did it. And Aaron and I did a whole bunch of back and forth to get it working, so I don't remember exactly. But it should actually just work because it's a script and it should just run it once. And then that generates the hashes in the deconfig.py for you, and that's all generated. If you don't have it in there or forget the script line, it won't run that, and then you'll have to generate it by hand, which might have been what I did. I probably didn't have the script line at the time. So questions so far? Okay. So we've got our package now. We're pretty happy with that, right? But the bigger question here is, how do we get it from here, where we currently are standing, to lots of people? Now, I mentioned earlier things like Docker. I mentioned, I didn't mention Vagrant, but Vagrant's another good example. How do you get packages into these systems? You install them, right? So I heard somebody say pip. Easy install. Have you heard of this one? Okay, so these are tools that allow us to go get something and pull it down. Now, I have some really big concerns with the way that people do containers nowadays. They make me nervous because they're just pulling random things down, putting them in a container, and distributing them. But there's a problem with that. What's the problem that I'm thinking of? Anybody have an idea? I see smiles around and some nods, so I know people know. Why are containers not secure? So he says containers are not secure, but why? Because I agree with that statement.
You don't know the problem there's stuff in it.
You don't know what's in it. Okay, so that's one problem of it.
It never gets updated.
Never gets updated. What was it?
Get root from inside the Docker to the base system.
Okay, so it can get rooted from inside the base system into Docker. That's what you said, right? Okay. I want to make sure I didn't get it backward. And you can go from Docker into the base system also. I guess that's what you're actually getting at. It's like if someone comes in from web app and exploits Docker, they can get into the base system. So why is this all bad, and how can we fix that problem? And this is something I've been thinking about for a very long time. I don't have a solution. Just asking questions. Anybody think about this before? So there's an article that somebody wrote recently about trusted containers, which is something useful, and trusted packaging is important too. There's two levels to this. It's more now because, well, everybody just throws a container up. It just works. No, it really doesn't. So you have several layers, and I'm going to write this on the board because I think it's useful if I can find a marker. Anybody have a marker? Okay. Maybe there are some, but I don't see any. Under the board?
Behind the screen.
I don't see any there. It's all right. I'll just do it on the mic. I'll just open it and then throw it at me. Okay, I trust it now. It says noteboard on it. Okay, so we've got some layers, right? We've got our programming language packaging, right? That would be Python in our case. That's an M. Right, bigger? Come on. So you guys can read that, right? Okay, so I can't write. So we got a programming language. What else do we have to consider? Our operating system, right? Because they also have their own packaging structures. Containers, right? What other considerations do we have to think about when we're deploying a package? Libraries. So other software. What are the things we have to think about? I mean, this is good. But what about the person who's distributing it? There's a word here that you're all kind of not getting. Evil, no. It's actually 5 letters, not 4. Trust. So my concern is that how do you trust a packager of a Python package? How do you trust a packager of a container? How do you trust someone who distributes OS software? Right? Sorry? You sign it. How do you sign it? Okay, I'll put my SSH public key out and sign it. So we're going to use something like GPG. That's what you were referring to, right? Or PGP, as the case may be. So what does that give us, though? So just because you signed it doesn't mean I trust you. Right? Does it mean I trust you? So like if you were Oracle and I paid you $1 million, I should just trust you, right? No, I don't want to trust Oracle. That's a good point, though. Like I think about that, and that's actually a really good, important thing to think about. There's a lot of social norms that we do. That's like really social or networking, actually. Inside of GPG, there's this thing called a web of trust. That's one way to do it. PKI with certificates is another. So it just depends on who you trust. And so you kind of have to have a way of dealing with that. But what I'm thinking about is kind of like, okay, so I've got setuptools here. If I were Red Hat, I'd have RPM. If I were Debian, I'd have dpackage. What would I have here? Docker, Vagrant. What's the other one? Zones. I can think of lots of other ones. What are these? What was it? What was that when you said it?
Another container, BSD jail.
Oh, jails. Yeah, BSD jails. So I think what I'm basically getting at is it starts at the software level, but there's so many more levels to think about. So we want to make sure we have this trusted component. What I'm thinking about now is Red Hat has a thing called RPM OS tree. Can't type or write either. So RPM OS tree, Docker does a similar thing. Have you ever heard of CoreOS before? Okay. How do you know how? Do you know how it's updated? Well, sort of. What I was more talking about is the CoreOS operating system itself. It actually has two file systems, one that's read-only and one that's read-write. And the read-write one is not live, so they update that one and reboot the box, and they switch. It's kind of an interesting concept. Red Hat's RPM OS tree does the same thing. And the idea here is now we don't have to worry about security so much as long as what we have in there is already guaranteed or something. We know there's going to be 0 days and things like that, but we don't have to worry about it being written to, except maybe memory, not so much disk. So kind of limit the risk. It isn't perfect, but it's a concept. So what we actually present is PiPI. I mentioned it earlier. And it's really, really important that we do some certain things with this. First off, you have to have a setup.py to distribute it, which is why I was working through all that with you guys today. And your package info file. It's really important that we have that, or else it can't get the metadata about the package. And there's one other thing here that I think they listed somewhere. It's the GPG signing, trusting someone. I saw it. I don't see it here, but I think I actually have to upload mine and provide it. So let's go ahead and just go grab my package info file, if I can get it to allow me to do so. Yeah, it should be good enough. Yay! So in my projects, in my denote, where is it, in there? Yep. So this is what you get when you package it. And then that way I can actually enter all this information, or I can just add it. Oh, and it failed. I did this before and it worked, so it might have just failed this time because I'm still having problems with the network. But essentially what it does is it prints out all the data about your package. I'll show you the package info file so you can see what's in there. Whoops. Isn't that where I looked? Oh, it's in denote egg info, sorry. You'll notice at the bottom it has a fingerprint. And it's a self-signed certificate. So you can also do that sort of thing. So up here, here is the metadata that we're distributing about this package. So I am not really the author. I don't know why it says that. I think it's because it says I'm the maintainer. And the author's email, the license, and all that sort of stuff that we already put into the setup.py. So this is actually getting generated automatically. The package info gets in there. Then you upload the tarball that they ask you for, and you can then distribute. And the nice thing is now, if you do this right, which I didn't do this right, so pip Python install, pick me a package that works. That's already in pip. Anybody want to throw one out?
Request.
That's a good one. I already have it, but I can do upgrade. Let's see if there is one. Since I use system packages, most likely there is. Oh, and I'm not root, because you need to be root to install it into the system. So there it goes. So they did the same exact process that we just went through. They uploaded it, they upgraded it, and they have a version called request 1.2.3. And now I've updated my package and can maintain it this way. So if you want to update your own packages and put them up, this is really important to do. And then the question here is, do you trust PiPI or PiPI, the cheese shop, whatever you want to call it, to distribute for you? And that's kind of what it comes down to. So I think there's some things to think about in terms of packaging and getting your stuff out there. But this is nice because now you can go to somebody and say, hey, pip install my package. And now they can start testing with it. They can start working with it. They can start hacking on it, whatever. GitHub's another way to do it. But GitHub's more of, here's the source code, do a git clone, check it out, try it out. And you have to go through the process I just did to fix denote to work this way, even though I didn't get it up to PiPi yet. Time is it? Ooh, I did good. 42 minutes.
So if you put your stuff on PiPi, then you can get installed.
Yep. And you can do easy install too. It also works.
Does it really mean that it's that secure, or
No, it doesn't guarantee any of that. That's why we had that conversation.
just means that you've gone
Yeah.
through the steps?
Correct. So if you trust pip and PiPi, you're going to get stuff that hopefully you trust the author too. So that's your point, is that security isn't guaranteed, and it's right. It isn't. You have to make sure that it's somehow the other way you do that. So what I would do personally is include an extra file that has a signed ASC file with it, and then put it on in the package itself. And then they can validate against the GPG site.
So I'm like really new to the industry, but I think they come in from school or something. It's like, oh, just go here and install this.
Yeah, and that,
Nobody
yeah.
seems to check anything. I'm like, oh,
So that's my comment, is everybody does that. Like, when you come from Windows environment, and this is basically your comment, is that, oh, hey, just download it. It'll just work. How many times have you guys gotten a virus from downloading something that just works? If you're in this room, you've likely gotten one, right? And it's really important to think about those things, which is why a trust environment is important. We need to make sure we have a way to figure out how to trust people. And Web of Trust is good. PKI is also good with certs and things like that. But there's lots of other ways to do it. I just don't know them, and I want to explore this more. So, any other thoughts?
Does PiPi have anything like that?
It has a GPG checking component, but I didn't see it up there, and I can't remember how to find it. So I know it's there, but So let me apologize to everyone right off the bat. I didn't do as much prep as I'd like. My wife broke her leg on Saturday. She had surgery on Wednesday, and I've been in the hospital all week. So I didn't really do a lot. I did this presentation before, so for the most part, I already knew it, so I wasn't worried about it. But I wasn't able to get you all the details about how to do a GPG signature, and I wanted to do all that, and I couldn't. So I apologize for that. But please tell me, because send me emails. My information.
Well, one of the classes that I went to earlier this week was saying that the MD5 sum is pretty much worthless too, that you can create files that are...
So MD5 sum is hackable. It's a one-way hash, but that's actually hackable. With GPG, it's a two-factor, so you have a private and a public key. Never give away your private key. Share your public key as much as you like, and it can be validated. So you sign with someone else's public key, and then they can decrypt it. That you encrypt it with someone's public key. They can decrypt it. If you sign with your private key, someone can validate it with your public. So that's why we do it this way. We sign our packages. So then they can be validated with your public key. So this is my website, Sexy Sexy Penguins, if you want to go there.
Just a word on that.
yeah.
That's tiny. So when you download the package and checksum or a signature, and then you can run the same validation again. And that basically just guarantees that what you downloaded is what was advertised that you were supposed to do.
Correct. So
It doesn't guarantee any other safety or security.
Yeah.
If there's still vulnerabilities in the software, if there's something else that was executed on install, it doesn't say anything like that.
So let me just repeat what Spencer said so that the microphone can hear it, and it gets out to people when they listen to this later. Signing something doesn't guarantee anything except that you know that you downloaded the thing you were guaranteed. You said you were going to download. Anything beyond that, running scripts or anything that does stuff, could have bugs, could break stuff, could be a problem, and that's why trust of the person who owns that key is important. So that's another thing to think about. Any other questions? Okay.
I have one. I heard that isn't there some, it's like an organization or a program that is actually, it's like the circle of trust. So if I trust you, I can validate you, you can validate me, you validate him, and then
Yeah.
if I want his package, but I know that you trust him and I know you, then I can pull your package. Or
Right. So there's this thing called a web of trust that's built into GPG itself.
is that what it's
Yeah, and you can actually control it up to 4 layers deep. So the 4th layer gets kind of tenuous, and it's called marginal. And there's 2 types of trust. There's you assigned their key, and then you also trust that person. So it's 2 different things. So their signature is you know who they are. The other one is you can validate that you trust that person.
Now, is it a valid thing that they're doing? Or
Absolutely.
Is it like a bunch of, yeah.
No, and you build your own, and the thing is it's based on you. So it's built from you out, and it's not built. So Spencer's is going to be different than yours. So, and his is going to be different than anybody else's in the room. Yeah, and that's not necessarily a good thing either. So knowing how a web of trust works is really important also, and that's one of the things I want to really kind of try to promote is that the other way to do it is certificate PKI and become your own CA is a good example. If you're a large organization like I work for the Linux Foundation, so if you trust us, then you can trust our PKI as an example. I'm not sure you trust us, but if you do, that would be a way to know that what we produce is trustable. The alternate way is, Spencer's a good developer. He's put out work a bunch of times. He has a key already signed by you. You can then say, hey, I trust that guy, and people that you trust can trust him also, because you've got his key signed, and you can go maybe 1 layer, 2 layers out. Beyond that, it's not really useful anymore. If you need anything, you can find me here. You can search Herlo on anything, and I'm likely that person. So you can find me there. I think it has information about me here. Yeah. So these are all the things that are about me. It's not like that important, but if you go look here, you can find my information. You can find me on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm on G+. I'm on GitHub. Send me a message somewhere. Ask me questions. I want to solve this problem more, and it's something I've been working on for a while. So I'd like to have a way of being able to manage packages better. When I was at PyCon a couple weeks, 3 weeks ago, there were several people trying to solve the packaging problem different ways. There's one called PEX, P-E-X, and another one I was called NixOS. This guy has kind of created an operating system itself that manages the packages for you. They're all Python packages, though. So that's kind of trickier, and it's a overlay on your operating system. So it doesn't do OS packaging necessarily. It does all of the stuff on the layer. It's kind of interesting, but I haven't found anything that does the trust layer the way I want it to yet, and I'm waiting for somebody to do it, or I'll find a way, or hopefully. So.
Could a cryptocurrency kind of thing help with that?
Cryptocurrency? Yeah, maybe. I mean, the thing about you're thinking along the lines of Bitcoin kind of concept.
Bitcoin is trustless transaction.
Sort of. There's so many things you can do with. So if you're going to talk about Bitcoin, the transactions themselves definitely are on the idea of are on the secure side, but then you've got things like launderers and other things that still go on that cause it to be less trusted, and the volatility in the network, which is something you have to. That's one of the things that security people don't like is volatility. So there's important to kind of maybe stabilize that, but the concept might be good. I actually kind of like the idea of that. Yeah.
I mean, your own.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think I actually kind of like that. If you take away the network itself and just do it from your perspective, it might not be so bad, especially with the ability, the encryption layer that they've got, and yeah, that might actually be useful. I'll think about that.
There's some people that have done a messaging, been
Yeah.
the technology and turn it into a messaging.
The messaging bus kind of thing.
Essentially,
Okay.
don't you need just a way to say this is my public?
Well, so how do you trust me? I think that's the bigger problem. How do you trust that I've produced a package that's valuable? It's really just about my social status. Like, it's about somebody else trusts me.
And that actually came from him.
Yeah, and then you know that it came from
The
me.
fact that it came from you, I think,
Sure, that's
is-
fine, but you could do that with GPG or certificates. I'm not concerned about the security part of that.
Or I could hack in and say, I'm
Yeah,
you're trusting me, not really him. And I'm like, that's
yeah. How do you do a man-in-the-middle attack? That's kind of what he's being as a man-in-the-middle in this example. There's so much to think about here. It's not a simple problem. So that's kind of my thinking is, I know I presented this as how do we distribute things, but this is really important. This is one of the big parts of it to me, is that if we're not secure, we're really not distributing properly. And it's something to consider. And I'm not saying that the web of trust doesn't work. It actually works really well. But you have to think about it from a perspective of you have to know that person or know somebody that knows that person to be able to trust them. And it's something to think about. It's not wrong or right. And that's kind of the thing we've been going on for so long, and I'd like to maybe have a better way to do it for. And the other part of that is we have so many packaging mechanisms. How do you do it for everybody? You know what I mean? And that's something to think about too. Operating system layer, each of them have their own. Then you have programming languages, everybody has their own. Containers each have their own. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Any other questions? Okay, that's it. It's 10 till. And we could talk for hours because, well, I don't have a session after this, so. But I have to actually go. Thank you.